Hello and welcome back to the latest video from GreenPro. This one is going over our newest feature in the heat pump tool within Installer Toolkit, which is our new heat pump proposal section. Now this activates once you've completed full design calculations, sound power level and system performance estimate for the heat pump tool. And what it does is it generates a customer facing PDF with a lot of information and explainers around certain terms. So I'm just going to take you through how to generate one and then also show you what it looks like when it's completed. This is a sample project that we've created, so the figures might not make sense. It's literally just that we've filled in some forms to make sure that the content is there for you. So when you've created your full project for heat pumps, as you will now be familiar with doing, what you do is go into the proposal section. And what this does is it takes all of the details that you've put in from the initial survey, the heat loss, the heat pump design and the hot water design, and pulls it through into all these fields here. So we have a couple of tooltips that can show you what you need to do for each one. But generally, if it's greyed out, it means it's been completed elsewhere and it's pulled through and is unable to be edited unless you go back into the project and edit it and resave. So the first thing we want to do is the cover page. This is the information that will show obviously on the cover page of the proposal itself, which is usually the customer name, customer address, your business details, and also project reference and the date of proposal. So you need to make sure that you put in a date of proposal and how long the proposal should be valid for. For this one, I've given 30 days, which is usually pretty standard. And then we move on to system specification. What this does is it pulls in all the information that you've previously inputted into the heat pump and hot water sections of the heat pump tool. There'll be a couple of fields that you might need to manually fill in, but they'll have a tooltip to say what that is. Everything else is greyed out because it's already been completed elsewhere. And like I say, if you want to edit that, you'll need to go back into the heat pump design sections, replace those fields and resave for it to update into here. Now then you'll find that most of the sections will have a show section, yes or no. If yes, it will pull through all the relevant information. Again, there might be some fields that you have to fill in here, but mostly all of the information will already be done for you. And as I say, these are just sample figures just so that we have something in the fields to demonstrate to you. And there will be little tooltips throughout. We go to room by room breakdown. If you've done your room by room heat loss, you can then basically just say yes or no to show this section. I'm going to select yes to everything so far so that you can see the full input at the end. The quotation section is a bit separate. So basically what we've done is we've enabled this proposal to either be just information for your installers to pass on to the customers, or you can have it as a full quotation, which includes the wording, pricing, and so on. So what I've done here is I've said I'm going to show this section and I am going to be sending it with a contract. So what that means is it will generate an actual proposal with all of the proper quotation wording. You would then couple that with, for example, your Easy MCS contract. Using interactive contract signing, you would bundle that into an envelope, send it to your customer, and when they sign the contract, they're also accepting the terms of this quotation as well. So I'm going to say yes to sending it with a contract, yes to showing the VAT. The VAT rate obviously is renewable, so that's going to be 0%. And show a line item prices is yes. Now your consumer code would like you to separate out the line items in your quotation as much as possible, particularly parts and labour. So what I've done here is just very generically done parts and labour. But what you can do is click edit here. You can add an item and you can add something like remedial works or, whatever additional things. If you want to be more detailed, then you can add certain things to this, or you can remove them as well. You can also add a discount field if you've offered any kind of discount, but that doesn't include boiler upgrade scheme because that is covered in a separate section. So if there's just a general discount, maybe like an introductory discount or a special offer, then you can include it in here, or you can just have the full price. You save that and this comes up with your actual package. So we call this the package editor. So all that does is basically allows you to edit the package. For the boiler upgrade scheme, if you're going to be applying for bus, then you would say yes here, put the bus voucher amount in, and then that will automatically discount this total by the voucher amount in the PDF when it's completed. And if you're doing bus, then you also want to show the bus disclaimer. Then we also say, would you want to show a payment schedule? You can say no to this, but if you say yes, then you can add in various different sections of the payment schedule. So for example, I've added deposit, advance payment, final balance. If you don't have a deposit and it's just final balance, then you might not want to give a payment schedule. But if you do take stage payments in any way, then you put the description in here, the percentage of the total price, which should calculate the percentage of this price for you. So for example, if I remove this for you and show you how this works, so we put final balance, that is 35% left, which will then calculate what 35% of £12,000 is. And then you can put in the due date as well. So I'll just put that in for the end of November, and we'll add that. And then we go on to the emitter system. This is basically just do room by room. Are you going to show water emitter systems that you're using for these? You can show yes or no. I'm going to opt for yes. Performance and carbon savings. You can choose the MCS default, which obviously, as you know, is set to 1.75, or you can put heat pump specific, which will make your calculations a little bit more probably accurate. But what you also want to make sure is if you're not offering the MCS default, then you need to make sure that that is explained what the MCS default is, and then show the alternative calculations just to make sure that you're compliant with the way MCS says you have to do it. But we've chosen heat pump specific so that the calculations are probably a little bit more accurate, particularly around the hot water. Do you want to show cost savings in the proposal, yes or no? Do you want to show a cost comparison chart, yes or no? And do you want to show carbon savings, yes or no? I'm going to choose yes for all these and show you what they look like in the final output. But you can, if you want to, just turn those off if you don't want to show all of that. But it looks quite nice when it's done. So I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. For the sound assessment, you've obviously done the sound power level calculations previously in the project area, so that will pull through all of this. It'll show whether it's a pass or a fail, and do you want to show this section, yes or no? So I'm going to say yes, we do want to show that to the customer. The additional quotation information, this is if you are sending it as a full quotation, then this will give you all of the appropriate wording that you need to show. So for example, do you want to show equipment guarantees, which we would usually put in our quotation, particularly if you're familiar with the Easy MCS quotation, then you have this list of guarantees and warranties here. You can add them. You can add line items to it like you would to the package editor, and then you can say what the guarantee length is. Just add those one by one, as many as you need, and then you can delete them if you don't need them. And then there's additional information that the customer would want from you. So what's your daily rate in terms of, if there was remedial works that needed to be done that were discovered and you needed to come back to do any additional work outside of what you've outlined in the quotation, then you would have a daily rate there. And then you'd also have the timetable for works. So when do you expect this work to start? When do you expect it to end? That will all get pulled into the quotation as well. So the customer has an expectation of when this work is going to start and finish. Will you be using subcontractors, yes or no? That, depending on your answer to that question, will pull through some particular wording around the use of subcontractors in the quotation wording, and the same for option of providing maintenance. If you're going to provide maintenance, what that does is it pulls through some wording to say that maintenance agreements will be agreed at a later date, and then we have the maintenance agreement within Easy MCS to provide to them if you wanted to use that. For the moment, I'm going to say no to that. And then we move on to the final section, which is appendices. Now, the appendices are basically all of the Toolkit PDFs that you're used to seeing if you've used the heat pump tool before. So every time you go through a section of the heat pump tool, you'll have a PDF generated at the end for room by room, for totals, for emitters. And what this does is it basically says, do you want to include these? Just to give the customer the workings out, if you like. So you can tick which ones you want. So I've ticked the emitter log and the heat pump design calculations, and then we save. What that happens then is it says to generate the form. Click this button here to generate. And what it will do is open up a PDF for you that you can then provide to your customers. You can either print it out if you like, you can save it into Easy MCS projects, and like I say, couple it with an interactive contract to get that all signed, or you can even just use our convert and share files section, which will obviously then send it through to the customer through like a web link, if you've seen this. So this is what it looks like. So this is a sample one, so it has our logo on it. That would be your company logo there on that right hand side. It then has the customer details, so everything that was in that cover page section now sits here. So it has your customer details, your date of proposal, how long it's valid for, and then your business details as well. As you can see, this is a not a real one. So We then move on to the contents page. Depending on what you decide to toggle on or off, this will change. So if you decided you didn't want to show sound assessment, for example, that wouldn't be there. Same with additional quotation details, appendices, and so on. Any section that you toggle no to will not sit here. But as you can see, I can hover over these and click on them if you wanted to get through to a section very quickly. But I'm going to take you through this stage by stage. So the first section is main components and system upgrades. So this is what heat pump you've chosen, what cylinder you've chosen, the information that goes with that, and then any emitter system upgrades that you might have identified when doing the room by room heat loss. And then we have our quotation. So as you can see here, it's pulled through my package editor, so parts and labour. That can be as detailed or as vague as you would like it to be. If you decide not to opt for a full quotation, this instead will be called pricing, and it would just be a pricing table, and it wouldn't have all of the additional information that you'll see later on. But as you can see, I've opted for bus, so it's put my bus voucher in as a discount and given me a total payable. And then it's included the bus disclaimer there, which is basically, it's not guaranteed that you're going to get the voucher. We have to make sure that that's included. Part 2 is home survey and system design. So this is obviously when you've gone through and done the system design calculations. What this does is it presents it in a way that the installer can present to the customer as, here's your explainers, why the heat pump needs to work in the way that it does, why the flow temperature is lower, how all of this works in a sort of easy to digest way, hopefully without too much jargon. But do have a full read of it and let us know if you think we need to reword anything to make it a bit easier. These good to know boxes you'll find will come up throughout, just to sort of explain to the customer what these things mean. So heat pumps are more efficient at a lower flow temperature. Why is this? What does that mean? You'll find that there are those throughout. Particular heat pump section, as you can see, these are definitely fake figures, but all this does is it basically puts all the information that you put in about the chosen heat pump. So the heat and power requirement of the home, and the annual heating requirement, what heat pump you've chosen, the nominal output of that, the output at design conditions, and then obviously an explanation of this SCOP as well. And what this also does, another good to know, is it explains to the customer what SCOP is, why it's important, and what that all means for them at the end of the day. And then exactly the same for your hot water. So you've done your hot water calculations, you know what the hot water capacity is, what you want the temperature to be, what the cylinder is that you've chosen, what the recovery rate is, the immersion heater size, and so on. And again, another explainer of the SCOP for the hot water. At this point, if you've not chosen the MCS one, that's when you need to make some comments to the customer about that and why this is different and why you think it would be more accurate. And then we move on to the room by room heat loss. So what we've done here is basically explained to the customer what room by room heat loss is, and then if the current radiators are not sufficient, then what we suggest those new radiators be. So as you can see, depending on what you've put in the room by room heat loss section, so if you've named the rooms, as you can see, this is a sample, so there's a lot of copies going on, and they all seem to be the same size as well. But if you put it'll have the name of the room, the area of the room design temperature, the power of the room, and then what the current radiators are. If they're green, that means that we're covering it. So you don't need a proposed emitter. But for example, this one is red. So if it was red in the emitter and the heat loss section, then you would need to propose new emitters that would cover the whole power demand of that room. So you would have the red ones, and then you'd have a green one here, recommended new. So you can go through these as long as you do full room by room of the entire property that you're doing, and you complete the emitter section correctly. So you have the current emitters and then the proposed new emitters. Then this will be full. If you haven't done existing radiators and proposed radiators, and all you've done is put in proposed radiators, so you're going to replace them, and you know what you're going to replace them with, then it will get rid of this wording of existing and recommended, and it will just say these are the design requirements, this is the radiator, and that will sit in the top section as the emitters as well. Then we move on to performance estimate and carbon savings. So this is again toggleable, so you can decide not to show this if you think that for example, the cost savings aren't great, or you don't want to highlight too much that there's not that much of a price disparity. But it all depends on the motivations of your customer. If they're motivated by carbon savings, then obviously you're going to want to show this to them. So for the moment, you can see it has the home's energy requirements, which is space heating and hot water, and then it has a system comparison. So your existing system, be that gas boiler, oil boiler, and so on, how much fuel is required, what the fuel price is, the annual carbon of that, and then the annual cost, and then the proposed system for the new heat pump system, the fuel required, fuel price, and the annual CO2. And as you can see, the difference between the CO2, particularly if that's your customer's motivation, is going to be something that you're going to want to highlight. So for carbon savings, we've put in a couple of little sort of visuals here. So varying flight lengths. So for this one, this is a return flight from Heathrow to Fiji, depending on the carbon savings here. Same as driving 11,353 miles, or how many trees you'd plant in terms of saving that carbon. And then we have a cost comparison chart here as well. So as you can see, the price, although, these are fake figures, if you like, so you might find that when you do it, there is a larger price disparity. But the carbon savings usually are particularly the motivator for more of our eco-conscious homeowners out there. But you can turn it on, see what it looks like. If it doesn't look very good, then you can obviously toggle it off and decide not to show it. But we wanted to give more of a visual sort of thing for the customer to understand how much carbon they're going to be saving by switching. And then we have our MCS disclaimer under this field here as well. Moving on to sound assessment. Again, you can choose to show this or not, but if it's a pass, then there's really no reason not to. So you'd have the explanation of what permitted development sound levels are up here, and then it has your calculated noise level, so what your heat pump is, the noise level that you got, whether it's a pass or fail. And if it's a pass, it says planning permission is not required due to the noise level. Now that could mean planning permission is still required, for example, if they live in a conservation area or something along those lines. So what we have here is this good to know box that kind of talks a little bit more about planning permission, what the rules are, and particularly if you're in a conservation area, then you still need to talk to somebody at planning. We can't, obviously you don't want to take on that responsibility. They need to make sure that they have checked out any sort of planning permission that they might need. And then we just have a little next steps, which is it pulls in your details, your email address and your phone number, and says if they have any questions, then please do call you. And then we have what we like to say, sort of the additional details. If you've opted for this to be a full quotation, these are the additional details. So it's included your payment schedule there that I did earlier, and the timetable for works, and also your day rate for additional works as well gets pulled into there. And your guarantees and warranties, and a little bit of wording around that. So obviously, if you selected no to any of those, then this information wouldn't be here. If you wanted to just do indicative pricing, all of this information also wouldn't be here, because it's more to support a full quotation that you'd be sending alongside a contract. Also, section 9.5 would not display either. If you decided that it wasn't going to be a quote that wasn't being submitted alongside a contract, then none of this would be here. It'd just be more of an indicative pricing proposal. But if you are sending it as a full quotation, it pulls in these terms. So you might have seen recently that we've streamlined the quotations on Easy MCS, moved a lot of wording out into the contracts. This is reflected here. So you just have basically the boiler upgrade scheme wording, any amendments that you'd like to make, contract terms, please refer to the contract to make sure you read all the terms and conditions. And if you wish to accept, then what they need to do next. And then I've opted to show appendices as well. And so what happens is I just keep scrolling, and here are all of my Toolkit reports that you're very used to seeing by now, tacked on at the end. You don't have to include them, but it's nice sometimes to show the workings out and to sort of show what Toolkit generally does, because we assume that you would be sort of, selecting these and presenting them to the customer as part of your designs already. So you can opt not to show them, because obviously with them, it does make it's 26 pages long, so it's quite lengthy. If you decide not to, then you can collate these and provide them as part of the handover pack instead, as long as they've got them. And they've made an informed decision based on the information that you've provided. So you can download this and then upload it to your Easy MCS projects. Like I say, you can submit it along with an interactive contract, so that when they get sent as an envelope, then the customer can sign that interactive contract and it accepts the terms of this proposal as well, as long as it's been selected as a full quotation and it has all the appropriate wording in there. If you just want to send it as indicative pricing instead, then you'd go back to the proposal, into the quotation, and you would just say, will you be sending this with a contract? No. And then what that should do is just change it to pricing. and get rid of all of the additional wording and terms and so on. So this is the latest. This is the latest thing. It's not for general release yet. If you'd like to try it, then just contact your consultant, ask them to turn it on for you. We can turn it on a company by company basis. Once we've got sufficient feedback that we know it's working, if there's any sort of things you think that we've missed, or you would like us to look at some of the wording we've used, if you think it's not very explanatory or you'd like it to be different, let us know. We can make those changes before we put them live. And we really want to get as many people trying this out as possible before we put it out to general release. So if you do have any feedback, then let us know. But we hope that you'll try it out, and we hope that you will give us all your feedback. Thank you.